This is the new Lexus IS, which recently received a major update. And while this Lexus IS isn't an all-new generation model, it still introduces a new chapter for the Lexus brand. And that's a future that Lexus promises to be an exciting and sporty one at that. From a design perspective, itong bagong Lexus IS looks properly handsome in all the right places. And unang tingin pa lang, your eyes will be immediately drawn to its aggressive front end, which is dominated by the signature Lexus spindle grille that's flanked by sharp-looking LED headlights. Its side profile also looks pretty sharp. And dito mo mapapansin that this still isn't an all-new model, because this heavily refreshed Lexus IS is still inherits sa previous model's signature character line, which is that kink that runs from its rocker panels all the way up to its rear doors. Though at least for this model, that design detail has now been toned down. And then moving towards the back, this is probably one of my most favorite rear ends in the compact luxury sports sedan segment, thanks to its wide shoulders, full-width LED taillights, along with the sporty rear bumper and subtle rear spoiler of this F-Sport variant. And even if you purchase the non-F-Sport models of the Lexus IS, the car still looks properly sporty. Overall, even though this isn't an all-new generation model, the design updates that Lexus made to the IS are significant enough to make it one of the sportiest looking in the compact luxury sedan segment. And so with that said, dumako naman tayo sa kanyang interior.
So as for the interior of the Lexus IS, and so we're here in the F-Sport first and foremost. That's why you can see these red seats, totoo lang, that comes with the F-Sport variant, no? And when this first came out noong 2013, actually I was a huge fan. Sobrang gustong-gusto ko interior ng IS. I also like yung kanyang mga knobs, no? Kasi it reminds me of those yung sa mga high-end audio system, yung knobs niya. So it feels great, maganda yung damping niya. It feels hefty pag iniikot mo siya. And now we have to get to the car's aesthetics. I like the red and black combination ng F-Sport variant ito. But you can opt for other colors. You can opt for a white interior kung gusto mo, or all black kung if this red is too emotional for you. And then, we also have to mention the electronics ng kotseng ito. We have to begin with the somewhat infamous Lexus Remote Touch interface na infotainment system niya. Well, to be honest, when I actually use it, I don't think it's as bad as what people would say. It is not good, I have to be honest. Itong touchpad is really clunky to use. It's a mixture of calibration sa pag-switch mo to the icons, kasi parang yung cursor mangyayari is minsan you will miss out. Parang you just want to go through one step lang pero minsan ma-overswipe ka. It's really, in terms of calibration, it's okay. I think I would say it's okay lang, but yeah, a rotary knob controller like in the BMW iDrive is still the best. It's actually the industry best for me, itong BMW iDrive infotainment system, no. And to fix that, to remedy that, you now have the option to use a touchscreen, kasi dati yung screen ng Lexus IS was deep into the dashboard, pero ngayon it's been moved forward kasi now it's a touchscreen. So you can use the touchscreen ngayon. Hindi ka na ngayon yung nakadepende sa touchpad ng Lexus Remote Touch ito, which is a good thing. You have now choices to interact with the infotainment system. And it now comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it looks really good in this huge screen. Moving on to the gauge cluster, which is digital. I like the bezel dito sa gitna niya. I like the fact na when you press the information button, it moves then with the digital gauges. So looks really cool. It's really mechanical, by the way. Hanggang ngayon, it's a neat party trick pa rin even in 2022. Looks really good. It's basically from the Lexus LFA. This is something that's inherited from the LFA supercar. And yun nga lang, since it's just a small digital gauge by today's standards, it doesn't display a lot of information nga lang when compared to, let's say, Audi's MMI or the digital gauges ng C-Class, or if optioned, the Live Cockpit Professional ng BMW 3 Series. Again, if optioned, kasi that's an optional extra. Yeah, The interior is still pretty interesting. There are parts nga na outdated na siya, but it's still a nice place to be in. The seats, by the way, are comfortable. I don't usually talk about in driving position ng kotse, except if it's either really good or really bad. But in the case of the IS, it's really good. I like the low slung driving position. I like the electronic adjustment sa steering. There's a lot of reach, by the way. So even if you're tall and push back yung upuan mo, there's a lot of adjustment pa rin sa reach ng steering, which is really good. I like that. And then other features you also have to mention, meron siyang cooled seats, which is again the only car in this class to have that feature. And yun ang benefits of this car being a beneficiary of the JPEPA, Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement. So thanks to that partnership, yung kotse ito has no tariffs if not mistaken. Basically, Lexus is able to price this car really well, kaya nga this car is only 3.8 only. I mean, at 3.8 million pesos, it's a couple 100,000 pesos less compared to the equivalent BMW 330i. And yeah, it's practically fully loaded with all the stuff you want. It's a nice place to be in. It's an interesting place to be in. Not exactly the most modern by today's standards, but it's still a very sporty and nice interior to be in.
The back seats of the Lexus IS isn't as spacious compared to its German rivals, especially when compared to the BMW 3 Series and Audi A4. This isn't helped by the fact that there's such a large central tunnel eating up legroom, and as a result, we'd limit rear seat passengers to just 2 people. And then as for amenities, all you get are cup holders and aircon vents, but no rear USB ports or even a dedicated climate control, which its German rivals have. And then moving towards the trunk, the Lexus IS provides 450 liters of space, which is on par with the rest of the competition. Plus, you can also fold down the rear seats for even more space. And then moving towards its engine choices, there are 2 that's available for you to choose. The range kicks off with the IS300H, which as the H denotes, is a 2.5-liter hybrid electric powertrain, while the model that we're driving today is the IS350F Sport, which comes with a bigger and more powerful 3.5-liter V6 gasoline engine. Regardless of engine choice, both are rear-wheel driven, with the hybrid models being mated to a CVT, while the IS350F Sport gets an 8-speed automatic and a limited slip differential, and that's a necessary ingredient for a proper sports sedan. And with all of these powertrain specs out of the way, how does the Lexus IS feel like on the road?
I'm pretty sure ang tanong nyo ngayon at this point is, how does this compare to the BMW 3 Series? Kasi after all, yun naman talaga yung kanyang chief competitor, and that's also where every compact luxury sedan is compared to, kasi siya nga yung benchmark in terms of a driving experience, no? So, let's put this into sport mode. Manual mode. So to begin, the Lexus IS is the first Lexus bale to have this Lexus driving signature, no? Which is basically, parang sabihin natin, if Mazda has Jin ba Itay, Lexus has the Lexus driving signature, no? And basically what this aims for the brand is every single car has this distinct driving feel. And here in the IS, no, at least in the interpretation sa IS, and moving forward, this is basically how it's gonna feel among other Lexus cars. Yung steering niya is sharp. We can say that the steering is sharp, ang super responsive ng steering niya. But it doesn't have the same amount of feedback as what you would expect in, for example, the BMW 3 Series. I still think na in terms of overall sharpness, mas sharp pa rin steering ng 3 Series. Likewise sa feedback, mas marami pa rin feedback yung steering ng 3 Series compared sa IS. But that's not to say that the IS is boring to drive. No, hindi. It's still a fun to drive sports sedan. It really is sporty. The handling is flat to the corners. There's plenty of grip, especially in this ISF Sport, which gets thicker tires sa likod. Staggered tires siya, bale. Mas makapit siya compared sa non-F Sport na mga IS. One saving grace, however, sa IS is yung kanyang 3.5-liter V6 engine, because the engine just sounds so good compared to, let's say, yung mga engines ng BMW ngayon, except at least for the inline 6 ng BMW, that still sounds really good. But compared to the equivalent 330i, dito nagko-compete sa M340i, FYI lang, compared to the 330i, mas maganda to ito kasi yung 330i, which was sold before ng BMW but not anymore. We only have the 318i and the M340i. Yung engine nun is basically the same as the 318i and 320i. It's a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged gasoline engine, but this has a naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6, and it sounds really good. The engine sounds really nice. So yung engine niya, being a naturally aspirated engine, no, it doesn't have the low-end thrust, the low-end shove that you get with the European competitors' turbocharged engines. And I guess we live in a time we're spoiled by that kasi even the 318i has a lot of punch at the lower RPM range. But with the IS350, yun nga lang, ang downside niya is anything below 3,000 RPM medyo doesn't feel as, you know, as powerful as I would expect, especially with the car that produces 311 horsepower bale, no? And that's the nature of naturally aspirated engines. Since wala ka ng turbocharging, yung torque niya is all at the higher RPM range. That's normal. But there's no denying that this 3.5-liter V6 sounds really good. And that's also what makes this naturally aspirated engine a bit rewarding to drive, since you have to wring it out to get all that power, and as a result, you really get to appreciate yung engine note niya. If you're gonna buy an IS, I really recommend you to buy this. The hybrid's also good. A good alternative to the 318i, especially if you want something that's refined, quiet, and fuel efficient, of course, being a hybrid. But yeah, the Lexus IS is really best experienced as a 350, as a 350F Sport. Just listen to that sound, no? Ang ganda talaga. And in a world of turbocharging, that's something that we're gonna miss. Again, this isn't an M340i competitor, but rather a competitor to the 330i, because that engine has the same, because that car starts with the same 0 to 100 kph time as this IS350, despite this having more horsepower, but that thing has more torque. But I digress. Yeah, back to the car's handling. Again, body's flat, there's plenty of grip to the corners. This is agile, but yeah, not as precise as the 3 Series. But one aspect that Lexus did right with the Lexus IS is that because of that Lexus driving signature, no, and still Lexus is known for comfort, for a good ride, this car, despite being on low-profile tires, and even in the stiffest sport settings sa kanyang adaptive variable suspension, when you put this car in sport mode, ang ganda pa rin ng ride niya. The 318i, the 3 Series line as a whole, we've also driven the 330i. You can check the written review for that car in the link below. But those cars, yung mga BMW, tend to ride in a stiff manner. Not uncomfortable, but stiff. Eto, this rides beautifully. This goes through bumps really well. It's a bit firm compared to the Lexus ES, of course, but it's really good. It's not gonna break your back. It's supple, comfortable, especially if you put it in comfort or basically in standard mode, normal. Ang swabe ng ride pa rin niya. And that's sort of the balance with the Lexus IS. It still manages to be sporty, but in exchange of the level of precision that you would get in the 3 Series, this is a bit more comfortable. However, in terms of refinement, which we're gonna be getting to a bit later in the normal driving part, it's not as, like, in terms of road and wind noise. That's one of the aspects where the IS350 starts to feel its age, no? Kasi as we've discussed kanina, this is not an all-new car. It's only a heavily refreshed version of the current IS, and as a result, you can feel a bit of its age sa kanyang driving dynamics. And one of those is refinement. At triple-digit speeds kapag nasa Slex car, nasa NLEX. Yeah, itong Lexus IS, hindi siya kasing refined na ng mga Germans. As in, there's really a significant gap in terms of refinement with this IS and the German cars. Whereas kung mapapansin yung review ko sa 3 Series, I would always normally say na that car's disconcertingly quiet. Pero here in the IS, at 100 kph. Yung road noise is about the same amount as you would expect in a Toyota Camry. Not bad, again. A Camry is not a noisy car. That's a quiet, comfortable car. But against the 3 Series, the A4, the C-Class, those cars are significantly quiet now at this point. And then we also must mention the brakes. The brakes are, I guess, okay. They're not as sharp as what the 3 Series has, because I find that the brakes has more travel compared to the 3 Series before siya kumagat. But again, not too bad. I mean, observation lang. Which again, reinforces my point na the 3 Series is the more precisely engineered sports sedan in terms of overall handling compared to the IS 350. But again, you win some, you lose some. The 3 Series doesn't sound as good as this, but this sounds epic. Unless you're getting the M340i nga. But for 3.8 million pesos, oh nga no, that actually gives me an answer. If my budget was at 3.8 million pesos, I think I'd buy this, the IS 350F Sport na, compared to the 318i. Of course, not a fair comparison, but yeah, basically, because of the JPEPA, the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement, there's a pricing advantage for the Lexus IS. So now that we're here in much more normal roads, for the lack of a better term, that's where the Lexus IS shines in terms of ride comfort, no? So again, with the 3 Series, the ride is on the firm side, but here in the IS, the ride is beautiful. It soaks up the bumps really well. Ngayon, naka-sport mode pa rin tayo. We haven't got out of sport mode because, sa totoo lang, yeah, even in sport mode, ang ganda pa rin ng suspension niya. Ang ganda pa rin ng ride quality niya. Hindi siya matagtag. It soaks up the bumps really well. Especially lalo if, let's go now to comfort mode, to normal everyday mode. And the ride is even better. The car rides nicely. We're gonna go through bumps ngayon. That was really good. Downside is, yun nga, as mentioned, it's in the road and wind noise where the IS is starting to show its age, and now we're driving to a bit of not so smooth asphalt, and yun, talagang rinig mo yung kanyang tire noise. Much more compared at least to the 3 Series and the other German rivals. Again, not too bad. It's just as good as what you would find in a Toyota Camry. But yun nga, that's a Toyota Camry, not a car like the BMW 3 Series or the Mercedes C-Class or the Audi A4. And then if you put the car in normal mode, basically in sport mode, the steering is much more heavy. Here in normal mode, the steering is light. The steering becomes light. And basically, it's a nice car to go around, around the city, around town, to go to your groceries. And also, one thing that we have to mention about the Lexus IS is that this also comes with the Lexus Safety System Plus, or basically Lexus's version of Toyota Safety Sense, which means you get automatic emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning, lane keeping assist, lane centering, by the way, which is really good on the highway. And you also get automatic high beams with the Safety System Plus suite. And of course, you also have to mention about the car's fuel economy. That's also the downside nga pala of having a large engine, a 3.5-liter V6 engine. That's one of its downsides. We're currently doing 10.2 kilometers per liter right now, which is mostly we've been doing provincial drives. Hindi pa ako nakakapag-Manila with this car. Or I think I don't have a plan to go to Manila either way since I'm taga doon. Yun lang yung downside mo. An equivalent 318i or a 330i would do about 2 to 3 kilometers per liter better more. But that's again a price to pay if you want a car that sounds as nice as this, which you probably do again. And sa totoo lang, a 3 kilometer per liter penalty against the 3 compared to the 330i, that's not too bad actually. After all, if you have money to buy a car like this, I'm pretty sure fuel economy isn't actually gonna be your concern, di ba? Parang bonus mo na lang yun. And that basically sums up the Lexus IS. It's not as precise as the 3 Series. It's not as bona fidely sporty as that 3 Series, if there's such a word I invented, bona fidely. But it's still fun to drive. It's still sporty, but it rides better. It sounds better, at least in the IS 350F Sport. And I guess that's also one reason to celebrate Lexus for the IS, because in a world where all of the engines in the future moving forward are either going to be electrified or turbocharged, expect engines to sound not as good as what you would find here in the Lexus IS. I mean, there are nice sounding turbo engines, but they're not a lot in the industry. No, so this is still one way to celebrate with the Lexus IS. No, basically what we would say an old school sports sedan in terms of the powertrain, but it's a good one at that. Old school doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. For a lot of people buying something sporty, they want a car that sounds good. And for just a couple 100,000 pesos more than a Civic Type R or a Kia Stinger GT, you can get this Lexus IS.
Pricing for the Lexus IS starts at a little under 3 million pesos, and that gets the base IS 300H. There's also an IS 300H Premier for a little over 3.3 million pesos. And this adds stuff like 19-inch alloy wheels, along with the suite of Lexus Safety System Plus advanced driver assistance features, which includes automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, lane tracing assist, full speed adaptive cruise control, and automatic high beams. And then of course, if you want the most thrilling Lexus IS, you could get the Lexus IS 350F Sport for a little over 3.8 million pesos. And apart from the 3.5-liter V6 engine, you also get a limited slip differential, a larger infotainment screen, fully digital gauges, adaptive variable suspension, just to name a few. And for the full specs, you can visit goflatoutph.com via the link below. Now, here's the burning question. How does the Lexus IS compare to the class benchmark, the BMW 3 Series? Since this car isn't an all-new model, the BMW 3 Series' more modern architecture makes it a fundamentally better luxury sports sedan, especially with regard to steering feel, rigidity, and high-speed stability. But it also doesn't mean that the Lexus IS isn't a fun-to-drive sports sedan. It just so happens that the BMW feels much more sorted and more modern to drive. But thanks to the benefits of the Japan-Philippine Economic Partnership Agreement, its pricing and standard features are in favor of the Lexus IS. And with this IS 350F Sport's naturally aspirated V6 powertrain, its engine note is clearly more addicting compared to the BMW 330iM Sport that used to be sold in the Philippines. And these factors make the Lexus IS the best value for money in the compact luxury sports sedan segment.